The hushed whispers sliced through the silence like a knife, each word a twist of the blade in my heart. I froze, my grip tightening on the kitchen counter as the unmistakable voice of my husband Frank carried from the living room. "Laura, I've planned everything. Ellie's inheritance from her mother won't even touch our account. I'll ensure she has no say." A cold chill ran down my spine as the weight of his betrayal sank in. All these years, I had trusted him, loved him, despite the gradual shift in his behavior, the controlling nature, the belittling remarks. But this was a new low, even for Frank. Tears stung my eyes as memories flooded back. Our wedding day, the birth of our son, Thomas, the countless family gatherings filled with laughter and warmth. How had we fallen so far? When had the man I loved become this cruel, manipulative stranger? I steadied my trembling hands, taking a deep breath. No more. I would not let him strip me of my dignity, my independence. Not after everything I had sacrificed for this family. A plan began to form in my mind, fueled by a newfound determination. I would gather what little I had left and leave this toxic environment. For my own sake, and for the sake of my beloved grandchildren, Jake and Emma, the two bright lights in my life, deserving of a stable, loving home. As I stood there, the weight of Frank's betrayal pressing down on me, I made a silent vow. I would not be a victim, not anymore. It was time to take back control, to reclaim the life that had been slowly chipped away by years of manipulation and emotional abuse. The path ahead would be difficult, but I knew in my heart that it was the only way. With each passing moment, my resolve grew stronger, a quiet fire burning within me, a fire that would guide me through the darkest of times and into a new dawn, where I could finally breathe freely once more. The weight of Frank's betrayal hung heavy in the air, suffocating me with each shallow breath. I knew I couldn't bear this burden alone, not anymore. Wiping away the tears that streamed down my cheeks, I reached for my phone with trembling hands and dialed the one person I could truly trust. "Sarah, it's me," I managed to choke out, my voice barely above a whisper. "Can you come over? I need you." Within minutes, Sarah was at my doorstep, her warm embrace enveloping me as I broke down once more. We sat together on the couch, and through the sobs that racked my body, I poured out the truth, the ugly, painful truth about Frank's deceit and his plans to strip me of my inheritance. Sarah listened intently, her eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and fury. When I had finished, she took my hands in hers, her grip firm and reassuring. "Ellie, you don't deserve this," she said, her voice steady and resolute. "You've given everything to this family, and he's repaid you with nothing but cruelty and manipulation." Her words struck a chord deep within me, resonating with the quiet voice that had been screaming for far too long. I nodded, my tears subsiding as a newfound determination took root. "You're right," I whispered. "I can't live like this anymore. I need to get out for my own sake and for the kids." Sarah's expression softened, and she squeezed my hands gently. "We'll figure this out together," she promised. "You're not alone in this." And so we began to plan, our voices hushed but our resolve unwavering. Sarah had been through her own battles with manipulative in-laws, and her experiences proved invaluable as we strategized my escape. We discussed every detail, from securing my finances to finding a safe haven where Frank couldn't reach me. With each passing moment, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of hope and purpose. I knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt truly seen and supported. As the sun began to set, casting warm hues across the living room, Sarah pulled me into another embrace. "You're one of the strongest women I know, Ellie," she murmured, "and you're not alone anymore. We're in this together, every step of the way." Tears of gratitude welled in my eyes as I clung to her, drawing strength from her unwavering support. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, with the love and resilience that had carried me through so many storms before. With Sarah's unwavering support and the promise of a new beginning, I felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through my veins. It was time to take action, to gather what little I had left, and prepare for my escape from this toxic environment. Quietly, I began packing my belongings, carefully selecting the items that held the most meaning: old photographs, cherished mementos, and the few pieces of jewelry I had inherited from my mother. Each item was a reminder of the life I had once known, a life filled with love and laughter, before Frank's cruelty had tainted everything. As I worked, I could hear his voice echoing from the living room, berating me for the slightest perceived misstep. His words cut deep, but I refused to let them break me any longer. I had endured enough, and now, with Sarah's help, I was taking back control. In the quiet moments between Frank's outbursts, I found solace in the company of my beloved grandchildren, Jake and Emma. Their innocent smiles and infectious laughter were a balm to my weary soul, reminding me of the reasons I was fighting so fiercely. One evening, as I tucked Emma into bed, she looked up at me with those big, curious eyes. "Grandma, can we stay with you forever?" she asked, her voice laced with a childlike innocence that tugged at my heartstrings. I forced a smile, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "I promise, sweetie. Grandma will always be here for you." Those words echoed in my mind, fueling my determination to create a safe, loving environment for these precious children, an environment free from the toxicity that had plagued our family for far too long. With each passing day, I grew more resolute, crystallizing my plans for our escape. I would take the grandchildren and flee to the cozy cabin my mother had left me, a sanctuary nestled deep in the heart of the mountains. There, we would be safe, free from Frank's manipulation and the suffocating grip of his mother, Laura. As I packed the last of our belongings, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror, a woman I barely recognized, her eyes weary but burning with a newfound strength. This was not the end, I realized, but the beginning of a new chapter, one where I would reclaim the independence and dignity that had been stripped away from me for far too long. With a deep breath, I gathered the bags and ushered the children into the car, their faces alight with excitement at the prospect of adventure. As we pulled away from the house that had once been a home, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of hope and determination. The road ahead would be long and uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive. A phoenix rising from the ashes of my former life, ready to spread my wings and soar towards a brighter future. Despite the newfound strength and determination that coursed through my veins, I couldn't have anticipated the events that would unfold at the next family gathering. It was a day that would forever change the course of my life, shattering any remaining illusions I had about the man I had once called my husband. The tension was palpable from the moment we arrived, with Frank's disdainful glances and Laura's snide remarks setting the tone for the afternoon. I tried my best to maintain a calm facade, focusing on the joy of being surrounded by my loved ones, but the weight of their contempt was suffocating. As the gathering progressed, Frank's behavior grew increasingly erratic, fueled by a potent mix of insecurity and alcohol. It was during a lull in the conversation that he turned his sights on me, his words cutting deeper than any knife. "Ellie, why don't you make yourself useful for once and get us all another round of drinks?" he sneered, his eyes narrowed in a way that sent a chill down my spine. Before I could respond, Thomas stepped forward, his face flushed with anger. "How dare you speak to Mom like that?" he shouted, his voice trembling with barely contained rage. Frank's lips curled into a cruel smile as he turned to face our son. "She's useless, Thomas. She knows it. We all know it." Those words hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating me with their venom. I could feel the eyes of our family members upon me, their expressions a mix of pity and discomfort. But in that moment, something within me snapped. "I'll show you who's useless, Frank," I said, my voice steady and unwavering despite the storm of emotions raging within me. Frank's eyes widened, taken aback by my sudden defiance. "What did you just say to me?" I took a step forward, my hands balled into fists at my sides. "You heard me. I'm done being your punching bag, your emotional doormat. I'm done with all of it." The room fell silent, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Frank's face contorted with rage, his cheeks flushed a deep crimson. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough!" Thomas interjected, positioning himself between us. "Dad, you've gone too far this time." In that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The years of manipulation, the emotional abuse, the constant belittling, it all came crashing down around me, and I realized that the only path forward was one of freedom, of reclaiming the dignity that had been stripped away from me for far too long. As Frank continued to spew his vitriol, I turned and walked away. my head held high. Sarah's reassuring hand found mine, and together we gathered the grandchildren and made our way to the car, leaving the toxic environment behind us. The drive home was silent, save for the occasional sniffle from Emma, who had witnessed the entire ordeal. But as I glanced in the rearview mirror, I saw not fear or sadness in her eyes, but a quiet strength, a resilience that mirrored my own. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, united by love and a shared determination to break free from the shackles of oppression. The road would be long and arduous, but for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope, a promise of a brighter future, where I could finally breathe freely once more. The weight of Frank's cruelty hung heavy in the air as we drove away from that fateful family gathering, but with each mile that stretched between us and that toxic environment, I felt a sense of lightness wash over me. Sarah's reassuring presence beside me, her hand gently squeezing mine, reminded me that I was not alone in this fight. As we pulled up to the cozy cabin nestled deep in the heart of the mountains, a wave of relief washed over me. This was it, my sanctuary, my chance at a new beginning. The very place my mother had left me, a haven untainted by the darkness that had consumed my life for far too long. Thomas was already there, having arrived ahead of us to prepare for our arrival. As we stepped out of the car, his warm embrace enveloped me, and in that moment, I knew that, no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family, united by love and resilience. "Mom, you're safe here now," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "We're not going to let him hurt you anymore." I nodded, blinking back tears as I clung to him, drawing strength from his unwavering support. Sarah ushered the grandchildren inside, their excited chatter filling the crisp mountain air, and for the first time in years, I felt a glimmer of hope, a promise of a brighter future where I could finally breathe freely once more. Over the next few days, we settled into our new surroundings, each of us finding solace in the simple pleasures of our secluded retreat. The grandchildren explored the nearby trails, their laughter echoing through the trees like a soothing balm to my weary soul. Sarah tended to the small garden, her hands coaxing new life from the rich soil, while Thomas and I worked together to make the cabin feel like a true home. And through it all, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders with each passing moment, replaced by a sense of freedom and independence that I had long since forgotten. No longer did I have to walk on eggshells, fearing Frank's wrath or Laura's cutting remarks. Here, in this sanctuary, I was free to be myself, to rediscover the woman I had once been, before the years of manipulation and emotional abuse had chipped away at my spirit. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself embracing this newfound independence with open arms. I blocked Frank's number, severing the last remaining tie to that toxic environment, and focused instead on the love and support that surrounded me. Thomas and Sarah became my rock, their unwavering presence a constant reminder that I was not alone in this journey. And then one evening, as we gathered around the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow over our little family, I looked around at the faces of those I loved most in this world, and a profound sense of peace washed over me. "We did it," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the gentle crackle of the fire. Sarah's arm slipped around my shoulders, pulling me close. "Yes, Ellie," she murmured. "You did it. You're free." In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I would face them head-on, armed with the strength and resilience that had carried me through the darkest of storms. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. A phoenix rising from the ashes of my former life, ready to spread my wings and soar towards a future filled with love, laughter, and the promise of endless possibilities. The first few weeks in our mountain sanctuary passed in a blissful haze, each day filled with the simple joys of freedom and the love of my family. But even as I basked in the warmth of our newfound peace, a part of me knew that the storm was far from over. It was a crisp autumn morning when the illusion of safety was shattered. I had just finished tending to the small garden, my hands still caked with rich soil, when the unmistakable sound of a car engine echoed through the trees. My heart skipped a beat as a familiar figure emerged from the vehicle, his face twisted into a mask of rage. "You think you can hide from me?" Frank roared, his voice cutting through the tranquil silence like a knife. I steeled myself, drawing upon the newfound strength that had carried me this far. "I'm not hiding, Frank," I replied, my voice steady despite the tremors that threatened to betray me. "I'm free, and you can't control me anymore." His eyes narrowed, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, the charming, confident figure who had swept me off my feet all those years ago. But that illusion was quickly shattered as he took a menacing step forward. "You think you're so clever, don't you?" he spat, his words laced with venom. "Running off with my grandchildren, turning my own son against me. Well, let me tell you something, Ellie. This little game of yours ends now." I stood my ground, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "This isn't a game, Frank. This is my life, and I'm taking it back. You've had your chance, and you blew it." His face contorted with rage, and for a moment I feared he might lash out physically. But before he could make another move, Thomas and Sarah emerged from the cabin, their presence a solid wall of support at my back. "Dad, you need to leave," Thomas said, his voice firm but tinged with sadness. "You're not welcome here anymore." Frank's gaze shifted to his son, and I saw a flicker of something akin to desperation in his eyes. "Thomas, please," he pleaded, his tone suddenly softer, more calculated. "You know how your mother can be. She's just overreacting as usual. Come home and we can sort this out like a family." For a moment I saw Thomas waver, his loyalty to his father warring with the reality of the situation. But then Sarah's hand found his, and he seemed to draw strength from her touch. "No, Dad," he said, shaking his head. "This isn't about overreacting. This is about Mom finally standing up for herself, and I'm not going to let you take that away from her." Frank's eyes narrowed, and I could see the last vestiges of his control slipping away. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough," I interrupted, my voice ringing out with a clarity and conviction I hadn't felt in years. "Frank, it's over. You've lost. It's time for you to leave." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but one look at the united front before him seemed to drain the fight from his body. With a final, withering glare in my direction, he turned and stalked back to his car, his shoulders slumped in defeat. As the sound of his engine faded into the distance, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I hadn't even realized I'd been carrying. Sarah's arms enveloped me, and I clung to her, drawing strength from her unwavering support. "You did it, Ellie," she whispered. "You stood your ground, and he couldn't break you." Tears of relief stung my eyes as I nodded, my gaze shifting to Thomas, who wore a proud smile on his face. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family united by love and resilience, a force stronger than any manipulation or cruelty that Frank could throw our way. The road to healing would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my former life, ready to spread my wings and soar towards a future filled with endless possibilities. Despite the confrontation with Frank and his hasty retreat, a lingering sense of unease hung in the air like a thick fog. I knew him too well. His pride and desperation would not allow him to simply slink away in defeat. And sure enough, just a few days later, my fears were realized. It was late afternoon when the familiar rumble of an engine echoed through the trees, shattering the tranquil silence of our mountain sanctuary. Sarah and I exchanged a worried glance as Thomas stepped outside, his brow furrowed with concern. "Dad?" he called out, his voice tinged with a mixture of wariness and hope. "Is that you?" The car door opened, and Frank emerged, his expression a carefully crafted mask of calm, a stark contrast to the rage that had consumed him during our last encounter. "Thomas," he said, his tone almost jovial, "I'm glad you're here. I was hoping we could talk, just the two of us." Thomas hesitated, his gaze flickering towards the cabin where Sarah and I stood watching, our bodies tense with apprehension. "I don't know, Dad," he began, but Frank was already closing the distance between them, his hand clapping down on Thomas's shoulder in a gesture that was equal parts affectionate and controlling. "Come on, son," he cajoled. "You know how your mother can be, always overreacting, making mountains out of molehills. I just want to clear the air, make things right again." I could see the conflict playing out on Thomas's face, the loyalty he felt towards his father warring with the knowledge of the pain and manipulation he had witnessed. But before he could respond, Sarah stepped forward, her eyes blazing with a protective fire. "Don't listen to him, Thomas," she said, her voice firm. "He's just trying to manipulate you, like he's always done." Frank's gaze shifted to Sarah, his lips curling into a sneer. "Stay out of this, girl," he growled. "This is between me and my son." "No, Dad," Thomas interjected, his spine straightening as he drew strength from Sarah's presence. "She's right. You've always tried to control us, to make us dance to your tune, but not anymore." Frank's mask of calm slipped, his face contorting with rage. "You ungrateful little—" "That's enough," I said, stepping forward to stand beside Thomas and Sarah, our united front a solid wall against Frank's crumbling power. "Frank, it's time for you to leave. You've lost control, and no amount of manipulation or empty promises is going to change that." For a moment, he seemed poised to lash out, his fists clenching at his sides. But then, as if sensing the futility of his efforts, the fight seemed to drain from his body. His shoulders slumped, and he fixed me with a look that was equal parts hatred and desperation. "I bet you're just miserable without me," he spat, his words laced with venom. "Just come home, Ellie. We can make this right, like it used to be." I met his gaze unflinchingly, drawing strength from the love and support that surrounded me. "I'd rather be miserable and free than controlled and miserable," I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. Frank's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, Thomas stepped forward, his arm wrapping protectively around my shoulders. "Dad, leave," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You're not welcome here anymore, not after everything you've done." For a long moment, Frank simply stood there, his chest heaving with barely contained fury. But in the end, he seemed to recognize the futility of his efforts, and with a final, withering glare in our direction, he turned and stalked back to his car, his footsteps heavy with the weight of defeat. As the sound of his engine faded into the distance, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me. Sarah's arms enveloped me, and I clung to her, drawing strength from her unwavering support. "You did it, Ellie," she whispered. "You stood your ground, and he couldn't break you." I nodded, my gaze shifting to Thomas, who wore a proud smile on his face. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family united by love and resilience, a force stronger than any manipulation or cruelty that Frank could throw our way. The road to healing would be long, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free, a phoenix rising from the ashes of my former life, ready to spread my wings and soar towards a future filled with endless possibilities. With Frank's departure, a weight seemed to lift from our little sanctuary, replaced by a sense of peace and possibility that had been sorely lacking for far too long. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity, as we settled into our new lives, free from the toxic influence that had plagued us for so many years. Thomas and Sarah were a constant source of support, their unwavering presence a reminder that I was no longer alone in this journey. Together, we worked to create a warm, loving environment for the grandchildren, filling our days with laughter and simple pleasures that had been all too rare in our former lives. Jake and Emma, bless their innocent souls, seemed to thrive in our newfound freedom. Their smiles grew brighter with each passing day, their laughter echoing through the trees like a soothing balm to my weary heart. It was in those moments, watching them play and explore the wonders of our mountain retreat, that I found myself truly letting go of the pain and resentment that had weighed me down for so long. As the weeks turned into months, I began to rediscover the woman I had once been, the strong, independent spirit that had been slowly chipped away by years of manipulation and emotional abuse. With Sarah's encouragement, I even took a part-time job at the local community center, finding joy in the simple act of helping others and forging new connections. It was during one of my shifts at the center that I ran into an old friend, someone I hadn't seen in years due to the isolating nature of my former life. Her eyes widened in surprise as she recognized me, and for a moment I braced myself for the pity or judgment that had become all too familiar. But instead, she pulled me into a warm embrace, her eyes shining with genuine happiness. "Ellie, it's so good to see you," she murmured. "You look radiant." I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of pride and accomplishment that had been sorely lacking for far too long. "Thank you," I replied, squeezing her hand. "It's been quite a journey, but I'm finally free. Over the following weeks and months, I made a conscious effort to repair the bridges that had been burned during my years of isolation. One by one, I reconnected with old friends and family members, opening myself up to the love and support that had been there all along, just waiting for me to break free from the chains that had bound me. And through it all, my grandchildren remained the shining beacons of hope and resilience that had guided me through the darkest of times. As I watched them grow and thrive in our newfound sanctuary, I couldn't help but feel a profound sense of gratitude for the strength and courage that had carried me to this point. One evening, as we gathered around the fireplace, the crackling flames casting a warm glow over our little family, Emma snuggled close to me, her eyes shining with contentment. "I love you, Grandma," she murmured, her voice thick with the innocence of childhood. I pulled her close, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "I love you too, sweetie," I replied, my heart swelling with a love and joy that I had once feared I would never feel again. In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a family united by love and resilience. The road to healing had been long and arduous, but as I looked around at the faces of those I loved most in this world, I knew that we had emerged from the darkness stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. This was not the end of our journey, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter filled with endless possibilities and the promise of a future where love, laughter, and the unbreakable bonds of family would reign supreme. And as I basked in the warmth of that newfound freedom, I couldn't help but feel like a phoenix rising from the ashes, ready to spread my wings and soar towards a brighter tomorrow.